Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary Becerra, for being here with us again. Mr. Secretary, this administration's policies ensure that everything is about the border. Everything is about the border, especially with the termination of Title 42, not to mention, of course, ending MPP, the Remain in Mexico policy, not to mention ramping up catch and release, stopping the border wall, promoting amnesty, refusing to implement E-Verify. Essentially, we've opened the border and we've surrendered operational control to the crime cartels. One would think that the HHS Secretary would be particularly concerned about the 100,000 overdoses last year in our country, the leading cause of death for those ages 18 to 45 a year ago, and the administration's facilitation, purposeful facilitation, quite frankly, through the policies of the increased bringing into our country illegal drugs, fentanyl, other highly dangerous drugs, and so forth that are streaming across our border in record numbers. You would also think the HHS Secretary would be especially concerned about the health threat posed by the cancellation or the termination of Title 42. I'll come back to Title 42 in a moment. But rather than invest in border security, in light of all of this, 2 million illegal crossings a year ago, estimated to increase to maybe 5 million this year with the ending of Title 42. This budget cuts ICE funding by $150 million, and it prioritizes the so-called climate crisis. Do you honestly believe that the climate crisis is a greater threat to the health, safety, and security of Americans than the invasion of the southern border?
Congressman, thank you for the question. You tied together a lot of things, and so my response won't be as direct as you'd like. I'm saddened that
I'd like to know if you think that the climate crisis is a greater threat to the country and to the safety, health, and security of Americans than the invasion of the southern border.
The climate crisis is a true challenge for us. The challenges we face at the border, I wouldn't describe them as you would, but there is a challenge that we have at the border, and I think we have to make sure that we have the laws.
So you don't think the climate crisis is a greater threat than the invasion of the southern border?
I'm trying to answer the question.
I would like a yes or no answer. Do you think the climate crisis is a greater threat to the health, safety, and security of Americans than the invasion of the southern border? Or do you think the invasion of the southern border is a greater threat?
Well, if you could describe to me what you mean by the climate crisis and the invasion at the border, then I can give you a response.
So you would not say that the climate crisis is a greater threat?
The climate crisis is a great threat. Our border challenges are also great, and we have to tackle both, and you need to have a government.
What's disappointing on the border crisis is every effort and resource that's been directed there by this administration has been to facilitate more illegals crossing into our country, not to prevent it. As a matter of fact, that's why they brought your department is to try to help facilitate and accommodate those who are illegally invading and entering our country.
Let's go back to Title 42. For me to say that, I think it's nonsense what you just said.
Let's go back to Title 42. What led to Title 42 being terminated?
The law and the science.
What recommendations and advice did you provide during the decision-making process leading up to this reversal of Title 42? What advice and counsel did you give on that from a health standpoint?
To follow the law and the science.
So the science being that the pandemic's over and should be declared over, we no longer need these additional health precautions with Title 42?
No, Congressman, you're uninformed.
So we still have the same threat from the pandemic, so to speak, that we need to keep Title 42, or which is it?
We're
not going to turn people away because they're bringing COVID into the country under Title 42 anymore, but yet the pandemic is not over, or which is it?
Do you wish me to answer?
I'd like you to answer succinctly.
There is still a pandemic before us. It is not the same pandemic we faced before. The challenges we face are different based on the science and the facts. We make decisions on the pandemic.
How concerned are you that with the estimates that with the rescission of Title 42, that the 7,000 crossings a day acknowledged by Jay Johnson yesterday, I saw him interview Jay Johnson saying it's overwhelming, his words were, it's overwhelming our administration to have 7,000 a day. 1,000 a day is too many. We've got 7,000 a day. It's estimated this will take it to 18,000 a day. How concerned are you about that?
So I deal with the health issues, but I will tell you, having served in this.
Yes, what this is doing to our health services, our health care, the threat to the Americans from a health standpoint, from an education standpoint, from a social services standpoint, from a security standpoint. It's unbelievable this administration would rescind Title 42, and you would not counsel them not to rescind that.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Jones.